Hello, fellow captains. Today, we will be taking a look at the USS Wichita, a United States Navy heavy cruiser with a rather interesting and unique history. In the early 1930s, the Secretary of the Navy, Curtis D. Wilbur, pushed for a new construction program for light and heavy cruisers. Wilbur succeeded in passing the Cruiser Act in 1929, which authorized several new cruisers. 5 heavy cruisers, the last of which was Wichita, were ordered between 1930 and 1934. Wichita was the last heavy cruiser permitted under the terms of the London Naval Treaty in 1930, which limited the U.S. to 18 heavy cruisers with a maximum standard displacement of 10,000 tons. The ship was originally intended to be built based on the design of the New Orleans class, but the design was revoked before construction began. Instead, the design for Wichita was based on the Brooklyn class of light cruisers, the Brooklyn design being modified heavily to give the new ship higher freeboard and better stability. The main battery of 9 8-inch guns were mounted in a new gun turret design that rectified problems discovered in earlier models of cruisers. Wichita was laid down at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard on October 28, 1935, and launched on November 16, 1937. By the time she was completed, in February 1938, Wichita was nearly over the 10,000-ton limit. As a result, she was completed with only 2 of the 8 5-inch guns to keep her under the displacement restriction. When the rest of the 5-inch guns were installed, it was found that the ship was too top-heavy, and so 200.4 long tons of pig iron had to be added to her bottom to balance the ship. Wichita was commissioned into the U.S. Navy on the 16th of February 1939 and was assigned the hull number CA-45. Her commander was Captain Thaddeus A. Thompson. Wichita was roughly 608 feet in length, had a beam, meaning the vessel's width, of 61 feet, making her shorter and more narrow than her Brooklyn-class heavy cruiser cousins. If you look closely, you can see this reflected in the in-game model at your home port. The Wichita was armed with a main battery of 9 8-inch 55 caliber guns, mounted in 3 triple gun turrets. The guns fired a 355-pound projectile at a muzzle velocity of 2,500 feet per second, or 760 meters per second. Maximum elevation of the guns was 41 degrees, providing a maximum range of a little over 30,000 yards, or 27,480 meters. Rate of fire was approximately 1 salvo every 15 seconds. The turrets even allowed each gun to elevate and fire individually. Her secondary battery consisted of 8 5-inch 38 caliber Mark 12 dual-purpose guns, 4 in single enclosed Mark 30 high-angle mounts, and 4 in open mounts, the open mounts providing no real protection for their crew from incoming projectiles or subsequent shrapnel. These guns fired 55-pound or 25-kilogram projectiles at a rate of around 20 rounds per minute. Muzzle velocity was 2,600 feet per second, or 790 meters per second. Against aerial targets, the guns had a ceiling of 37,200 feet, or 11,300 meters at 85 degrees, as the secondary armament was designed to be used to supplement the AA battery. On March 26, 1942, USS Wichita, assigned to Task Force 39, departed the United States to reinforce the British force based in Scapa Flow. Task Force 39, commanded by Rear Admiral John W. Wilcox, Jr., included the aircraft carrier Wasp, the battleship Washington, the cruiser Tuscaloosa, and 8 escorting destroyers. While en route, Wilcox was swept overboard in a heavy sea and lost. Rear Admiral Robert C. Giffen then took command of the task force. After arriving in Scapa Flow, the Wichita and the other American ships spent several weeks training with their British counterparts. On April 28, 1942, Wichita departed on her first major operation with the British. She was assigned to the Allied escort of the Atlantic convoys QP-11 and PQ-15. The American component, organized as Task Force 99, comprised Washington, Wichita, Tuscaloosa, and 4 destroyers. The British assigned the carrier Victorious, the battleship King George V, a light cruiser, and 5 destroyers. Wichita also participated in Operation Torch, the American and British invasion of North Africa. At the end of October 1942, Wichita was assigned to Task Group 34.1 under the command of Rear Admiral H. Kent Hewitt. Task Group also included the battleship Massachusetts and the cruiser Tuscaloosa. The ships were assigned to provide gunfire support for Operation Torch, the invasion of French North Africa. Wichita participated in the naval battle of Casablanca, which began early on the morning of November 8, 1942. The ships were tasked with neutralizing the primary French defenses, which included coastal guns on El Hanc, several submarines, and the incomplete battleship Jean Bart, which lay at anchor in the harbor. Wichita and Tuscaloosa initially engaged the French batteries on El Hanc and the French submarine pens, while Massachusetts attacked Jean Bart. French naval forces, led by a light cruiser, put up a stubborn defense. The French forces launched a pair of attacks to break up the American landings. During the first French attack, either Wichita or Tuscaloosa damaged the French destroyer Milan and forced it aground. A second French attack was also defeated. One of the 2 American cruisers sank the destroyer Fourneau and damaged Fondier. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong, so any French-speaking viewers, I apologize. Wichita, Tuscaloosa, and Massachusetts also engaged Jean Bart. At 11:28 a.m., Wichita was hit by a 194mm or 7.6-inch shell fired by a gun on El Hanc. The shell penetrated her deck and exploded below, injuring 14 men. Hewitt broke off the attack temporarily, but by 13:12 hours, several American warships began firing on French vessels exiting the harbor once again. Wichita and Tuscaloosa closed on the port to engage the French cruisers still in the harbor. Heavy fire from El Hanc forced the American cruisers to retreat shortly after 1500. For the remainder of the operations off North Africa, Wichita patrolled between Casablanca and Fahala. Her part in the amphibious assault complete, Wichita departed the area on November 12th, bound for New York for repairs, closing her chapter in the history of the Atlantic Theater. Wichita participated in several other operations in the Pacific Theater. However, for the purposes of saving myself time and the use of this information for future content, we will leave that for another video. So now I'm going to talk about the Wichita in-game and some of the characteristics that make it such a powerful ship in-game compared to other cruisers. Also, I want to put on screen my commander, the build, and how you might be able to mirror the commander so that maybe you can make a similar build and try it out for yourself. Okay, I'm going to put on screen the commander that I use. This is Thomas Kincaid. I almost never use any other commander other than Thomas Kincaid for the Wichita, and here are the reasons why. You have auditory stimulus, ingenious, full speed ahead, velocious, steer clear, and fully packed. I also use as inspirations Azur Lane Baltimore and Azur Lane Rune. Talk more in detail about that in a moment. However, auditory stimulus, you have your sonar cooldown, ingenious, increase in gun traverse speed and negative splash damage as far as the gun speed for the traverse is concerned. You're going to be turning a lot to avoid shells incoming. Increasing your gun traverse speed, it increases your ability to engage targets as you're making those turns. Full speed ahead, increase in speed and rudder shift time. Velocious, max movement speed, you're adding to your speed and your rudder shift, and it gives you the ability to chase down all those pesky destroyers that are being a nuisance in game. Steer clear, rudder shift, and repair time on your rudder. It's very helpful, especially if you don't want to burn your repair consumable You could just let it repair naturally if you're behind cover. Fully packed, negative on the cooldown time on your consumables, and increase in consumable charges. That is extremely important for certain builds, especially this one. That gives you an extra sonar, an extra radar, and an extra repair party. Now we're going to jump over to the inspirations that I'm using. This is AL Baltimore. I'm not going to go into detail about these commanders and their abilities, just about their base trait, because that's what you're using as inspirations. As you can see, adaptive tactics, rudder shift time, negative 4.5%, and she's not even maxed out. Right now I have her at 14.1. She could definitely get better. I'm pretty sure she maxes out at negative 6%. The second inspiration is Azora Lane Rune. As you can see, her base trait is Fate Simulation. Cruiser gun traverse speed plus 0.6 degrees a second, and then rudder shift time negative 2.4%. So both of these traits are adding on to other skills that we already have on the commander and on the ship itself. So you're stacking on to abilities that are already on the boat, making them even stronger. Whenever I build a commander, especially like this commander for this particular ship, I tend to stack onto abilities that I am already increasing the abilities of. A great example is the rudder shift time. So when looking at the ship's stats in a little bit here, you're going to see that I have the rudder shift down to 1.6 seconds. Now we'll take a quick look at the upgrades that I chose and the stats that come with all of the choices that I made. After that, we're going to do some quick gameplay footage. Feel free to pause at any point if you want to take a longer look at any of the upgrades I chose or any of the stats shown. When looking at the ship overall, both the consumables and the specs, the Wichita itself doesn't look like an incredible ship. When you start looking at the numbers themselves, survivability, artillery, AA, maneuverability, concealment. The only one that's kind of outstanding is the maneuverability when you look at the 84 overall. Excuse me. However, I will say, generally speaking, when you play it in game, you will notice that this ship is a cut above the rest as far as heavy cruisers are concerned. When looking at the armor, you can see that it's not as good a armor as, say, the Edinburgh. Just as a quick comparison, Edinburgh has 32 millimeters of armor all around, at least on the bottom of the hull itself, whereas Wichita has 27. That's quite a difference. However, when playing the game, I've noticed I still bounce just as many shots with the Wichita as when I played the Edinburgh, and that's fighting the same exact ships. As you can see, the barbettes, they're pretty well armored. You're not going to be able to take a direct shot from close range from battleship caliber guns, probably Bismarck guns and up, so 380s and up, you probably won't be able to handle. But that's why you have your rudder shift, that quick rudder shift time, and one of the best things you can do when fighting other ships up close is not keep your guns faced right at them. Turn them after you fire so that your front plate has a little angle. There are two versions of the Wichita available in World of Warships Legends. One is the Campaign Edition, which is no longer available for purchase, and then there is the version in the store that is available for doubloons. They are almost identical. There's only a couple minor differences. The Campaign Edition, the HE does 2,800 damage with a 14% chance to set a fire, while the AP does 4,000 damage at max. And then the non-Campaign Edition, the HE does 2,600 damage
with still a 14% chance to set a fire, and then the AP at a max does 4,200 damage. So a little bit more AP damage for a trade-off of less HE damage. Okay, let's head on over to this match that I played. It's a smaller match, so not as many guns that the Wichita normally has to deal with, but it's still a good example of what Wichita can take. So spawn in the middle. Excuse me. Definitely want to push the middle. Wherever you spawn, you probably want to stay there and assure that your team can either spot that area or the enemy cannot take that area from you. You can always deny them by getting defense and hiding behind an island if need be. You're going to see an example of that in a moment. With the Wichita and the speed of it, because of the skills chosen and the maneuverability, generally speaking, I will sail close to islands. It's like your second set of armor. Sailing in open water with a boat like this, you can do. However, I've found that the survivability of the ship increases exponentially with the help of using islands rather than just relying on the maneuverability alone. As you can see, friendly destroyer, pretty sure it's Kagiro. Yep. Excuse me. He's sending his torpedoes into Bravo. I can see that Bravo is now being captured by the enemy. This is exactly what radar is for. So, Helena spotted. I know he's there. I'm going to point that out to my team, and I'm going to push into Bravo. So, I'm spotted. I'm going to pop radar. I know that destroyer's in there. Right away, I'm going to take shots at the destroyer. He is the priority. He's always the priority. As long as he's spotted, I'm probably not going to shoot at anything else unless it's almost dead. So, yeah, that second shot was absolutely awful. And here, I'm taking my time. I don't know if he's going to turn out immediately and try to avoid the island or run aground, so I waited a little bit. I could see that he turned last moment, so I took a shot. So he disappeared, but I pushed him out of Bravo. He can't take Bravo as long as I'm here, so I will be right here as long as he exists. Charles Martel. He's a pretty dangerous ship, but he's also looks like he's dealing with 2 battleships up there, so he's probably not too much of a problem. Looking at the other side, the middle, I got a Helena that is deciding to try to duke it out with me. It's not going to go well for him. He is full side on. As long as he is spotted, and you can see that I switched to AP, I'm going to punish him. I'm going to make sure that he can't sit there and poke out and just shell me. Now, the reason why I continue to back up, I got 2 battleships there that are also shooting at me, so that's 2 battleships and the Helena. You can see that compared to my first video, I've already lost more health here than dealing with that Iowa. And it's because there's a lot of people shooting HE at me. Now that Helena pops up again, get AP out at him. It doesn't do too much damage, but it's a reminder to him that he cannot sit out there and just shoot at my battleships without getting some kind of return fire. Now that he disappeared, I'm going to try to shift fire over to the Brandenburg. Anywhere that I see an enemy out in the open, I'm going to take a shot to assist my friendly players. The back and forth maneuver that you're seeing here, it's a good way to avoid enemy secondary fire as well, because it's not super accurate. A lot of it's going to hit the island. I can't afford to jump out into Bravo with the Kagiro. There are 2 reasons why. One, I'm going to get spotted. I'm going to get spotted. All of those secondaries are going to come and start raining down on me, causing fires. Another is those torpedoes you're seeing right there. If I go out into open water right now, the black is going to continue to send torpedoes into Bravo, and there's a good chance that they're just going to hit me randomly, even with the good rudder shift. I mean, if I'm dealing with battleship shells and I'm turning left and right, there's a good chance that he's just gonna get me on a miracle shot. You can see that the York just took out the Helena with some torpedoes. That is great for our side. That's less 152s that our destroyer has to deal with. That's less HE and fires that I have to deal with. So now I can focus on assisting on getting rid of the battleships. Again, I see the black, immediately shoot at him. I don't care about the battleships anymore. They don't matter. Black is much more dangerous. He's faster. He can move around the map with impunity if need be. If he's smart, he stops shooting his guns. So as long as he is spotted, I'm going to shoot at him as long as I know that I can hit him. But while he's behind that tallest part of the island, I know my shells aren't going to hit him, so I don't even bother. Again, he's pushing out again. I switch fire. I switch targets. I'm shifting over to the black, trying to get rid of him. You can see the battleship doing the same thing. He is definitely the main target as long as he's out in the open and spotted. So, he disappears. I'm going to maneuver around my friend here because he's trying to maneuver back in order to get shots on the enemy. Us running into each other, it's just gonna cause a problem where the enemy is going to see us and take advantage. It's just a larger target for them to shoot at and more shells for them to hit accurately. Now I'm going to shift fire to the Brandenburg. He is full broadside. I'm going to use my rudder shift to maneuver and get all my guns on really quick, and then spin around and get my nose back at him. You can see that it's not impossible for the Wichita to take damage or to get modules knocked out, but also you can see I'm not taking a lot of damage. Those are 380s. Those aren't small guns, right? But that last salvo, he only did 1,200 damage to me. With the battleships pushing right behind me, it's...
Torpedoes, dead ahead.
I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to support where I'm at, support my fire, but it's not a good move. Not as long as there's a destroyer and he's sending torps and we're all grouped up, that's not a good idea. I don't know why people do this in this game. They bunch up thinking that it's gonna help them in some way. It's not gonna help you as long as there's destroyers or people that can send long-range torps. Now you can see Charlie's getting taken. I know exactly where that black is, right? Get rid of that battleship. He can't shoot at me anymore. The other battleship, he's stuck behind the island. Even if he wanted to push me, it would take a little while for him to get to me. So the destroyer essentially put himself into a position where he's on his own against me. I'm just going to say that's probably not a good call. Now I'm looking around, seeing what's left of my team, seeing where he's at. I can see he's not really in a position to help me, although if his guns are turned this way, he could potentially help. So, run my radar, see where this guy's at. Take a shot. It hits, that's great. If it doesn't, you know, I'm probably going to scare him. Now, he did take Charlie, so good on him. But he's also trying to thwart me. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not pushing him right now. One is because he's got torps. I know he hasn't reloaded. The other is the Heinrichs right there in the middle, waiting for me to push that destroyer. So I just stand by, make sure that I'm safe from torpedoes, make sure that I'm safe from those battleship guns. The Bismarck ends up taking care of the battleship, which is great for me. Now I can push. Now I can go out into the middle without worry that I'm going to get citadeled from my right side while I'm trying to push this destroyer out. Now, normally I think most people would turn around and try to take Charlie. However, I can see my friendly battleship is already pushing into Alpha. My main goal is defending Bravo. 100%. I'm letting him know that I'm going to push with the command chat wheel.
I need help.
and that I'm going to need his fire support because I'm pushing this destroyer out of Bravo. He's not going to take it. Not as long as I'm here. There's no way. I ran my sonar. His torpedoes are never going to hit me unless I do something stupid. So, push his smoke. Make sure he gets out of Bravo. At the same time, I'm going to do my best to close in with my friendly battleship so that I can screen for torpedoes for him so that he doesn't get killed. Because we lose him, I lose the gun advantage. They have a destroyer and a cruiser left with his big guns still sitting around. As long as I'm able to spot for him, he could shoot over the top and get rid of that cruiser for me. I don't have to deal with the cruiser toe-to-toe, because at this point I don't know how much health the cruiser has. So I know that the destroyer is spotting me from the other side of his smoke, so I decide to use his smoke in order to hide myself. Now, this can be a good thing and a bad thing. Excuse me. Now that I'm in the smoke, he can't see me, but he can also send torps, and it's harder for me to see his torpedoes in the water. So it's not good because my sonar is on cooldown. As you can see, I actually catch a torp. However, with that quick rudder shift time, where I should have caught 2, I only caught 1. And sorry about the cuts here. Internet's not too great in the building that I'm in. I have shared internet, so anyway. There's a couple little glitches that you're gonna see where it cuts out on the internet connection, and well, that's what happens when you share internet. So get behind the island away from the Charles. Destroyer's already dead. Battleship dealt with him as long as I had him spotted because he was close to a secondary build and he had almost no health left. So now I'm gonna turn my nose in. Normally people would try to say, oh, you should run away from the ship, you have the lead. And normally I would agree. However, I knew that the Charles Martel had almost no health from the interaction with him before. If I turn, I have that flat part of my stern, the flat part of the back of my ship. He could potentially penetrate, so I'm going to put my nose toward him, which is much harder to penetrate. And as you can see, most of the shots that he shot at me bounced. So that's the end of the battle. A decent example here of what the Wichita can accomplish in a match, especially when you have fire support and you're not the only one doing all the heavy lifting. Third on the team. XP is pretty good. I will say, as far as the other ships on the other team are concerned, I mean, they did just fine. It feels like they did what they needed to do. Maybe except for the Helena. I don't really know how he got torped there, but he probably had already run his sonar because of the Kagero, and then he ended up catching a torp from the York. So that's it for this game, and a closer look at the Wichita. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for future videos like this one, and comment down below any ships that you're interested in seeing a closer look at and knowing the history of. My name is Buckshot Bucky. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.